An important aspect of making a custom interior map is selecting your backdrop, because this will affect the lighting of your map. I mentioned before that the lighting of a custom interior map can be kind of strange. The reason for that is we're limited to using the exterior backdrops, and because we're placing a ceiling, the lighting is blocked, so everything ends up being in shadow. Because of that, most of the backdrops end up being way too dark, so out of the long list of exterior backdrops, there are only a few that are even worth considering. Your best option for a fully enclosed deck is to use one of the desert backdrops, because they're the brightest. In the past, I have used Desert 06, but when I was preparing to make this tutorial, I went through and took screenshots of every single desert backdrop, and I couldn't tell any difference between them. As far as I can tell, the lighting on all of the desert backdrops is completely identical, so it doesn't matter which one you use. The Orias backdrop is also almost identical to the desert backdrops, so you can use that one as well. The only downside to using the desert backdrops is that the lighting is sort of uneven. Some walls are lit up more than others. So, if you don't like that, there are a few alternatives you can try. The alternative possibilities are Ryza, Nopata Desert Day, Tropical, and Volcano. These are all significantly dimmer than the desert backdrops, but the lighting quality can be a little bit more even across all the walls. These could also be useful in situations where you want to have some more subdued lighting on your deck. It's not that easy to tell from these little images, but the lighting on the characters is quite a bit darker with the non-desert backdrops. You can still feel free to try out all these different backdrops for yourself and see what you think, though. If you want a deck with a view of the starfield, you don't really have a choice. You have to use a night backdrop, because they're the only ones that show the stars, and the brightest one of them is Night 03, so that's the one you have to use. Overall, Night 03 is still pretty dim, but the other night options are even worse. Alright, at this point your floors and corridors are in place, along with any windows you may want, and you've selected the backdrop for your map that gives it the proper lighting. From this point forward, making your map isn't really any different from making a normal Foundry map. You need to place your consoles and other decorations, put in your NPCs and any enemy groups, place your story objectives, etc. To do that, though, you need to know at what elevation to place your props and NPCs. And the answer to that is you want to place them so their Y value is 0.9 higher than the floor. That will make it so they're sitting exactly on the floor, as opposed to floating or buried in the ground. In addition to that, there's one little advantage we have with a custom interior map. We know the actual coordinates of the walls. That means we don't have to guess just how far out from a wall to place a console or a wall panel, and instead we can set it using exact coordinates. On the screen here, I've listed some values for some commonly used objects that are usually placed up against a wall. Obviously not every object is listed here, but this can at least save you some time placing these specific objects. In addition to that, based off of these figures, you can probably estimate where other objects should be placed relative to the wall. I'll just briefly go over what each of the columns means. The depth offset is how far out from the wall you want to place the object. So for example, if you have a wall running along z equals 0, you'd place a console generic ship 01 at z equals 0.6, or alternatively on the other side of the wall you'd put at z equals negative 0.6. These values are for placing the objects against the flat part of the wall. If you're lining the object up with the center light strip of wall generic ship 03, you need to add another 0.2 to the depth offset so that it clears it. The height relative to the floor is the elevation you need to place the console at for it to be flush with the floor, or where the object otherwise makes sense. As you can see, most consoles use a default value of 0.9. The higher values are mostly used for wall panels, since having a wall panel sitting on the floor is kind of ridiculous and pointless. The width offset is sort of specialized. It's how far you need to set the object off-center for it to line up properly with the wall. With most consoles you can put them at any point along the wall, so it really doesn't matter. With console group M03 and M04, the objects aren't centered around their push pin, so you have to move them slightly to the right along the wall to get them to line up with the wall coordinates. With the wall panel, you can set them at any point along the wall, but if you offset them by 2.5 compared to the length of the wall, it will fit seamlessly next to the center strip. Using that offset, you can create a strip of wall panels running the entire length of a wall. This can really help improve the appearance of your deck, although it eats up a lot of detail objects. One last time, by default, all other objects and NPCs should be placed 0.9 higher than the floor. That should work for almost every object that doesn't have something weird going on with its model. So start with that, and then if you have a problem, you can adjust it manually. That basically concludes my tutorial. I hope it was at least a little bit of help to some people. If there's something you need help with or something you didn't understand, or if you have any tips or suggestions of your own to share, please feel free to contact me. My in-game address is @Nagarak, and you can also send a private message to Nagarak at the STO forums. I look forward to seeing what you guys manage to come up with. See you around.